Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who is watching this video, depending on when you're watching it. Thank you all for being here and giving me your much appreciated time and attention today. My name is Jessica Kasick, and I am so excited to present to you my dissertation defense for the Creative Leadership for Innovation and Change Doctorate Program at the University of the Virgin Islands. During this presentation, I will share my research journey, findings, and also my contributions to this field. Let's get started. The title of my dissertation is A Statistical Analysis of Longitudinal Trends in Domestic Violence, a Creative and Innovative Intervention. In this research, I explore the long-term patterns and trends in domestic violence incidents nationally through a comprehensive statistical analysis. My goal is to identify key factors and patterns that contribute to these trends and to propose a creative and innovative intervention strategy that could potentially mitigate the impact of domestic violence within our communities. This study is both significant and timely given the increasing attention to domestic violence as a critical social issue. Through this research, I aim to contribute a fresh perspective that blends empirical analysis with an innovative, creative intervention approach. I would like to first begin by introducing and thanking the distinguished members of my dissertation committee for their invaluable guidance and support throughout this process. First, I would like to acknowledge Dr. James Kaufman, who serves as the dissertation chair in this committee. Dr. Kaufman has been instrumental in guiding my research and offering critical insights. Because of the sensitive topic matter, I actually received almost a dozen no's for this position until the very one that mattered the most. It has been an arduous process, and I am very thankful for your support, Dr. Kaufman, from the very moment I told you about my research. Without you, I would not have been able to move forward in my education. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Tamara McMillan, who served as my student reader. She has provided relentless support as we work to complete our PhDs in tandem, as well as detailed feedback and valuable suggestions. Tamara, thank you so much for your ongoing support and unconditional space to let me vent free from judgment and full of smiles. That kept me moving forward over these years, more than you know. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Gerard Puccio, who served as my expert in creativity. Your invaluable expertise in creativity and profound knowledge of creative problem solving has been instrumental in shaping the innovative interventions proposed in my research. I am deeply grateful for your unwavering support throughout this PhD journey and beyond. Your guidance has remained a cornerstone of my academic and professional development for nearly a decade. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Latiz Hairston, who served as my methodology expert. Your belief in this work from the very beginning has been a constant source of motivation and encouragement. Thank you for your insightful guidance, unwavering support, and dedication to the success of this research. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Rick Nader, who served as my second dissertation sponsor. Your support throughout this process has been instrumental in helping me overcome the barriers and keep moving forward. I greatly appreciate your adaptability in navigating the various challenges I've faced since you took over, and your steadfast encouragement to see this program through to completion. Thank you for your flexibility, guidance, and belief in my success. Last but not least, I would also like to thank Dr. James Matarala, who served as my prior dissertation sponsor. Congratulations on your retirement. Dr. Matarala, your foundational support laid the groundwork for this entire degree. Your expertise, guidance, and encouragement during the early stages of this journey provided the critical momentum that was carried forward. I am deeply grateful for your dedication and the significant role you played in shaping this entire program. Thank you all for being here and for your ongoing commitment to this research journey. This dissertation explores how creative problem solving can aid in the long-term recovery of domestic violence survivors. Over 18 years of data were analyzed to identify critical trends and pinpoint when support is needed the most. Findings reveal that creative approaches that can adapt around the survivor's needs are vital, not only for addressing immediate needs, but also for empowering survivors to continue to rebuild their lives over time. By integrating statistical analysis with innovative solutions, this research highlights the need for holistic support. Many survivors are classified as no longer in need within 6 to 12 months of leaving their abuser, despite this being a very pivotal period for their recovery. This study advocates for a data-driven, creative approach to break the cycle of violence and enhance survivor support. Before we dive into the research, let me give you a brief overview of today's agenda. We'll begin with an introduction to the research where I'll provide background information on the topic and outline the research questions that guided this study. Next, I'll review the literature review and summarize the existing research and theoretical frameworks that informed this dissertation. In the following section, I will review the methodology and explain the research design, data collection methods, and the analytical approaches used in the study. Then we'll move to review the results, where I'll present the key findings from the analysis. Finally, I'll interpret the results that were discussed in Chapter 5 and explore their implications and also the proposed directions for future research. By following this agenda, my goal is to provide a clear and comprehensive understanding of the research and its contributions to the field. To begin, I will review the purpose of this study and provide the background and context that shaped the focus of my dissertation. We'll examine domestic violence as a whole to understand its impact and the significant challenges survivors encounter, especially in achieving long-term recovery. By the end of the introduction, you'll clearly understand the problem, the research questions that guided my study, and the reasoning behind selecting such an important area of focus. The purpose of this study aims to analyze data over time from the Domestic Violence Annual Census to explore how creative problem-solving can serve as an intervention for supporting long-term survivor recovery. By identifying trends and patterns in domestic violence data over time, this research seeks to develop creative strategies that could positively impact survivors. The study emphasizes the potential of innovative interventions, including community-based programs and training initiatives for organizations worldwide that support victims and survivors. To understand the impact that violence has on individuals, I will review the definition, types of abuse, as well as the cycle of violence. Domestic violence is defined as the use of abuse to control others, often within families, but also in other close relationships. Victims can include parents, children, siblings, spouses, unmarried intimate partners, friends, roommates, and even caregivers. It wasn't until the signing of the Violence Against Women Act in 1994 by President Bill Clinton as part of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act that unmarried intimate partner abuse was formally recognized as a crime. This abuse can take many forms, such as physical, sexual, psychological, verbal, religious, and even economic. On the right, you can see that there is a cycle of violence, which demonstrates how abuse often progresses through 4 stages. First is the calm before the storm. The second phase is tension building. The third and most well-known stage of this cycle is the incident itself. And the fourth is reconciliation, or what is most commonly known as honeymoon phase. Without intervention, this cycle tends to perpetuate across generations, inflicting long-term harm on individuals, community, and society as a whole. Understanding these dynamics is critical to creating effective interventions and breaking this destructive pattern. As we move forward, it's essential to understand the core issues this study addresses clearly. The problem statement focuses on the gaps in support for domestic violence survivors, which can be categorized into 3 main areas. The first area is lack of long-term support. Often survivors receive immediate crisis intervention, but as they transition to longer-term recovery, the level of support tends to diminish significantly. This gap leaves survivors vulnerable, making it difficult for them to achieve true independence. The second area is psychological and economic challenges. Many survivors face unresolved trauma and economic dependency, which are not sufficiently addressed by current resources. This puts them at a higher risk of re-victimization by their current or future abuser, as the underlying issues remain untreated and inadequately managed. The third area is a need for creative intervention. There is a critical need for innovative approaches to support survivors in rebuilding their lives. Traditional methods do not address the complex challenges these individuals face, and without new and innovative strategies developed to support long-term recovery, the risk of them returning to abusive situations remains extremely high. To guide this study, I have formulated a central research question and 3 sub-questions that delve into the core aspects of the problem. The central research question is, what statistical findings support the need for introducing a creative and innovative intervention to support recovery for survivors of domestic violence? This central question aims to identify and validate the necessity for new and creative approaches to aid in the recovery process for survivors. The first sub-question is, how can the utilization of creativity and innovation assist as an intervention against domestic violence? This question seeks to explore the potential of creativity and intervention as tools that can be employed to enhance existing support mechanisms or even create new ones tailored to the specific needs of survivors. The second sub-question is, how can creative problem-solving techniques be applied to develop effective solutions for the various obstacles faced by domestic violence survivors? Here the focus is on practical application. How can these creative techniques be used to address the real-world challenges that survivors encounter? The third and final sub-question is, what might be all the ways to measure the impact of creative problem-solving as an intervention program on supporting long-term recovery for survivors of domestic violence in future research? This final question is forward-looking, considering how the effectiveness of these creative interventions can be evaluated over time. The goal is to establish metrics and criteria that can be used in future research to assess the success of these programs. These research questions are integral to understanding how creativity and innovation can bring about meaningful change in the lives of domestic violence survivors. Next, I'll be discussing Chapter 2, the Literature Review. In this chapter, I provided a comprehensive overview of the existing research and theoretical frameworks that inform my study. The literature review serves as a foundation, helping to contextualize my research within a broader academic landscape. The literature review highlighted a crucial aspect: the intricate relationship between self-identity, self-concept, and the effects of victimization. Let's begin by understanding self-identity and self-concept. Victimization can deeply fracture a person's self-identity, which is the cohesive integration of one's traits and life experiences. Self-concept, on the other hand, refers to the cognitive understanding of oneself, encompassing current attributes and aspirations for the future. The formation of self-concept involves two key components: the existential self and the categorical self. The existential self reflects the awareness of being a unique individual, distinct from others. The categorical self, in contrast, identifies shared characteristics with others, such as gender, roles, or group affiliations. Together, these components shape self-image and self-esteem, influencing how we perceive our social roles and personal effectiveness. Finally, we delve into self-image, the ideal self, and self-congruence. Individuals naturally strive to align their self-image with their ideal self. When alignment is achieved, it fosters fulfillment. However, misalignment generates anxiety and feelings of inadequacy, perpetuating internal struggles. Over time, these struggles can lead to a devolution of self, a process that impacts the core of who we are and can redefine identity in very harmful ways. Understanding these dynamics is essential for addressing the profound psychological effects of victimization and guiding survivors toward recovery. This slide outlines the critical timeframes associated with the risk of returning to an abusive relationship, highlighting the importance of support during these periods. The immediate to 6-month period after leaving an abusive relationship is marked as the high-risk period. During this time, the emotional strain, financial instability, and fear of retaliation can heighten the perceived safety of returning to the abuser, making it crucial for support systems to be already in place. Between 6 to 12 months, we see a variable risk period. Separation may become easier with time, but survivors still face emotional and financial challenges that can tempt them to return. Continuous support during this time is essential to prevent this from happening. Lastly, after 12 months, the risk of returning generally decreases. However, survivors may still face challenges like financial difficulties, emotional trauma, and shared responsibilities, leaving them to be still vulnerable. Even in this period, ongoing support is critical to ensure that they remain separated from their abuser and continue their long-term recovery. The key takeaway from this slide is the necessity for consistent and ongoing support to help survivors navigate these risky periods successfully. Let's take a moment to delve into the critical connection between economic dependency and abuse. As this slide highlights, financial dependence is a significant barrier preventing victims from breaking free of their abusive situations and cycles. An astonishing 98% of victims remain with their abuser due to economic abuse. This underscores how abusers exploit financial control to maintain power over their victims. Even more concerning, economic dependency is the #1 leading cause of family homelessness. It's also the primary reason victims often return to their abusers. Without the means to support themselves or their families, victims face an uphill battle to achieve financial independence and stability. This data makes it clear addressing economic abuse is not only essential for empowering survivors, but also for breaking the cycle of abuse and reducing homelessness. By understanding these numbers, we gain insights into why programs offering financial assistance and personal and professional development are vital lifelines for survivors as they transition to becoming not only more independent, but heal and evolve their self-identity and self-concept. Next, I'll be discussing the literature surrounding the pathway to recovery from trauma, focusing on two critical concepts: post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, and post-traumatic growth, also known as PTG. First, post-traumatic stress disorder involves a range of symptoms including re-experiencing the trauma through flashbacks and nightmares, avoidance of reminders, emotional numbing, and heightened anxiety. These symptoms disrupt normal functioning as individuals struggle to manage overwhelming emotions and the constant triggers, not just from memories of the trauma, but also from anything the mind and body associate with it, making it difficult to function in everyday life. Next, post-traumatic growth, in contrast to PTSD, refers to the positive psychological change experienced as a result of the struggle with highly challenging life circumstances. Post-traumatic growth can manifest in several areas, including the discovery of new possibilities, enhanced relationships, increased personal strength, a deeper spiritual life, and a greater appreciation for life. Finally, the role of creativity. Creative problem-solving plays a pivotal role in the healing process. Engaging in creative problem-solving post-trauma aids in coping, meaning-making, and cognitive reframing, which can drive post-traumatic growth and foster resilience. Creativity also evokes motivation and transcends challenges, supporting long-term recovery for trauma survivors. Leaving an abuser does not mark the end of a survivor's trauma. The onset of PTSD, combined with the emotional and practical challenges of uprooting their life and navigating the recovery process, create a complex and often overwhelming situation. Research highlights 4 key factors that significantly influence whether a survivor may return to an abusive environment with a previous abuser or a new one. The first factor is emotional and psychological. Their emotional bonds, often manipulated through psychological tactics, can make it incredibly challenging for survivors to leave and stay away from their abusers. The second factor is economic and social. Financial constraints and a lack of social support can trap survivors, making it difficult for them to maintain their independence away from their abuser. The third factor is safety concerns. The fear of retaliation and persistent threats, often undeterred by orders of protection, can strongly compel survivors to return to their abuser as a perceived means of self-preservation. The final and fourth factor is support systems. Access to advocacy services and other support systems is crucial. These resources can empower survivors to stay separated from their abusers and embark on the path to long-term recovery. Each of these factors is critical in shaping a survivor's ability to escape and rebuild their life. There are 4 theoretical frameworks that provide a foundation for understanding how survivors of abuse can recover and grow through creative problem solving. The first is the assumptive world theory. This theory suggests that traumatic events like domestic violence can shatter a survivor's core beliefs about themselves and the world, leading to a disrupted sense of reality. The second is the cognitive adaptation theory. According to this theory, survivors use positive illusions to cope with trauma. Creative interventions are particularly helpful in maintaining hope and regaining a sense of control. The third theory is post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth examines how survivors can experience positive change and personal growth after trauma. Creative problem-solving plays a significant role in facilitating this transformation. The last theory is the organismic valuing theory. This theory posits that individuals naturally strive to integrate their traumatic experiences into their sense of self. Creativity supports this growth process by helping survivors make sense of and incorporate their trauma into their identity. Together, these frameworks highlight how creative problem-solving can help survivors rebuild shattered beliefs, foster positive change, maintain hope, integrate trauma into their self-identity, and achieve long-term recovery. Next, I will review Chapter 3 of my dissertation, where I outline the methodology used to explore creative problem-solving as an intervention to support long-term recovery among trauma survivors. This study utilizes a mixed methods explanatory sequential design to analyze nearly 2 decades of annual census data. The data, collected by the National Network to End Domestic Violence, is gathered through a non-invasive, unduplicated, and confidential 24-hour survey period. Their survey captures information from individuals of all ages who have sought services from domestic violence organizations across the United States during that single day. The surveys are meticulously designed to gather comprehensive demographic, socioeconomic, and health-related information while maintaining ethical integrity and respecting the sensitive nature of domestic violence. Once the data is collected, the findings are compiled into a detailed report that ensures transparency and provides a clear understanding of the results. For my research, I utilized the totality of this data to identify and analyze trends in domestic violence, offering insights into the evolving needs and challenges faced by survivors. In this section, I will discuss the research methodology used in this study, including the design, the rationale and significance behind choosing this approach, data collection and analysis methods, and the main objectives of the study. This study aims to address a gap in existing research by focusing on how to support long-term recovery and independence for abuse survivors, helping them to sustainably rebuild their lives post-trauma. The methodology uses an explanatory sequential mixed methods approach involving a two-phase data collection process. First, through quantitative methods to identify patterns and trends, followed by qualitative research to break down, further explore, and explain the findings. This approach allows for the development of interventions and identifies key variables for future research, particularly in supporting marginalized groups. The rationale and significance of this methodology lies in its ability to bridge a critical gap in existing research surrounding the long-term recovery of trauma survivors. Traditional approaches often lack tailored interventions that guide survivors of domestic violence toward post-traumatic growth without relying on trial and error, which can hinder their healing process or even cause regression. This study's mixed methods explanatory sequential design allows for a more holistic understanding of how survivors break the cycle of violence and move towards rebuilding their self-identity and sense of self on a long-term basis. Through this methodology, the research not only addresses the need for more effective resources, but also advocates for the infusion of innovation into the support systems available to survivors. This approach has the potential to transform the way interventions are designed, ultimately improving outcomes for survivors and contributing to the development of strategies that facilitate true healing and resilience. In the quantitative phase, I used existing data provided by the annual National Census Day surveys administered by the National Network to End Domestic Violence. These surveys provide valuable data about victims such as the number of victims that were supported during a year, types of services requested and provided, unmet needs, and more. The survey is gathered through a non-invasive, unduplicated, and confidential 24-hour survey. This survey captures individuals of all ages who have sought services from domestic violence organizations across the United States during a single day. The data is collected nationally to measure trends in domestic violence services. In this phase, statistical tools are used to analyze demographic patterns, prevalence rates, and service utilization over an 18-year period of time. For my research, I utilized the totality of this data to identify and analyze trends in domestic violence, offering insights into the evolving needs and challenges faced by survivors. The qualitative phase of this study focuses on using creative problem-solving tools to explore potential interventions for the gaps identified in the quantitative phase. Tools such as reframing problems, generating new ideas, and encouraging innovation can guide the development of actionable solutions. These creative methods help develop insights into how domestic violence survivors might better heal and thrive using interventions like creative problem-solving to address their challenges in new and innovative ways. Once both phases of data collection were complete, I integrated the findings. The quantitative phase offers a broad view of trends and patterns in domestic violence services, while the qualitative phase explores the human experiences behind those trends. By combining both, we gain a richer and more comprehensive understanding of the issue. The goal is to develop actionable, evidence-based interventions for addressing gaps in domestic violence services, informed by both numerical trends and survivor experiences. In the quantitative data analysis, I examined 18 years of annual National Census Day surveys. These surveys focus on domestic violence victims and the services that they requested in a single year, as well as the frequency that the needs of the victims went unmet. Descriptive statistics identify trends, patterns, and gaps in current interventions. The qualitative data analysis phase uses creative problem-solving tools to explore survivors' experiences and perceptions. This phase integrates qualitative insights with quantitative findings to design a theoretical intervention program aimed at addressing identified gaps and guiding future research. Integration of both datasets provides a comprehensive understanding of domestic violence victimization, helping design evidence-based solutions like new programs or trials to improve outcomes for survivors. The main objective of this research was to analyze 18 years of domestic violence census data to uncover trends and patterns. My goal was to explore the potential of creative problem solving as an innovative intervention strategy. By doing so, the study seeks to support the long-term recovery of domestic violence survivors. Additionally, this research aims to assess the effectiveness of creative strategies, particularly those implemented in community-based programs and training initiatives. The ultimate goal is to empower survivors with the tools necessary to rebuild their lives and sustain their long-term recovery beyond the point at which our current support systems begin to fail them by no longer providing the critical support they still need. In Chapter 4 of my dissertation, I present the findings of my study. This chapter integrates quantitative analysis of 18 years of national census data visualized through charts, along with qualitative insights derived from creative problem-solving tools to provide a deeper understanding of the data. The full-scale results of my analysis are encapsulated in this table, which presents data from domestic violence census conducted between 2006 to 2023. This table covers a wide range of metrics, including the number of victims served, services provided, unmet requests, and training offered by participating DV programs. Overall, the table provides a comprehensive overview of participation, services, and challenges faced by domestic violence programs over nearly 2 decades. It highlights changes in service provisions over time and identifies ongoing gaps. This data will now be further broken down by specific categories within it to explain each section of data individually for you. In this table, titled Hotline Calls, you can see that between 2006 and 2023, the data shows a 45% increase in hotline calls, a clear indicator of both heightened awareness and possibly a rise in domestic violence incidents. For instance, the total number of hotline calls increased from 47,864, which was equivalent to 11 calls per minute in 2006, to 75,410, which was equivalent to 16 calls per minute in 2003, underscoring the growing demand for immediate support. This next graph, titled Victims Served and Unmet Requests, presents a visual representation of the trends in domestic violence victims served alongside unmet needs. The graph shows a consistent increase in the number of victims served by domestic violence programs from 2006 to 2023, beginning with approximately 47,864 victims served in 2006. The number steadily rises, reaching a peak of 76,791 in 2022. The graph illustrates both the progress and ongoing challenges in domestic violence service provisions. While there has been a significant increase in the number of victims served over the years, the unmet needs have also grown, signaling a gap in resources that prevent these programs from meeting all requests for help. This discrepancy underscores the necessity for continued investment, intervention, and expansion in these services to better accommodate the rising demand. The residential service breakdown data reveals significant trends in housing and shelter services for domestic violence survivors. From 2006 to 2023, the number of victims accommodated in shelters grew from 47,864 to a whopping 75,410, showing increased capacity but also highlights persistent unmet needs. Years with higher unmet requests, such as 2015, demonstrate that housing options often fell short of demand. This emphasizes the need for continued expansion of resources and infrastructure. A comparative analysis between adults and children reveals similar trends in shelter services. For adults, shelter numbers fluctuated, peaking at 13,532 in 2019 and dropping during the pandemic before rising again to 11,352 in 2023. For children, shelter demand rose to 13,167 in 2015, but saw a decrease during the pandemic, reaching 10,551 in 2023. Traditional housing services have seen steady growth. Adults using transitional housing increased from 3,587 in 2007 to 9,498 in 2023, while children in transitional housing grew from 5,053 in 2007 to 11,650 in 2023. This indicates a growing shift towards long-term solutions for survivors, particularly for families. Overall, the data reveals an increasing demand for both shelter and transitional housing, with a clear trend towards providing more sustainable living options for survivors, especially families. The need for expanded support services remain critical, particularly to address the long-term recovery of survivors. Within the census data for this study, I also analyzed the data on a state-by-state basis. To refine the data for the purposes of this study, I analyzed the full list across the 50 states provided within the census and selected the top 5 states for total victims served and total unmet needs. The key insights identified about the top 5 states for total victims served include: there is a consistent leadership between Texas and California, consistently ranking high across all categories, showing stable and extensive demand for services, likely due to their large populations and infrastructure. There's a variable ranking for New York, which ranks high in 89% of instances, but its fluctuating position suggests varying service levels or demand. Florida and Illinois are steady performers, maintaining solid ranks at 83% and 61%, indicating steady but less dominant service needs. Lastly, Michigan and Pennsylvania have an intermittent presence that shows inconsistent demand, reflecting variable service availability. Overall, Texas and California have the most consistent and critical service needs, while other states like New York, Florida, and Michigan show more varied demand. On the next graph, titled Top 5 States for Unmet Needs, there are key insights about this graph as well. Firstly, California, New York, and Texas consistently report high unmet needs, with California leading at 89%, followed by New York and Texas at 83%. Despite being high-demand states with extensive service provisions, these states still struggle to meet all needs, highlighting significant service gaps. Fluctuating unmet needs are seen in California, New York, and Texas, possibly due to varying demand or service availability, while Washington and Illinois also experience notable unmet needs, appearing 78% of the time. Georgia and Missouri show moderate to low unmet needs, with Georgia appearing less frequently but still indicating gaps. Pennsylvania and other states demonstrate more sporadic and localized unmet needs. Overall, California, New York, and Texas face persistent challenges in meeting service demands, while Washington and Illinois show recurring gaps, and states like Georgia, Missouri, and Pennsylvania exhibit more intermittent issues. Next, I'd like to discuss the qualitative results. Using creative problem-solving tools, I analyzed the quantitative data from multiple perspectives. The process began with brainstorming data questions to critically review the data and identify insights. This method enables a deeper evidence-based analysis by approaching the data from different angles. After brainstorming, I applied convergent thinking to select the most relevant questions aligned with the research focus. These questions were then reframed as challenge statements using invitational stems like how to and how might to promote creative thinking and generate new ideas. The questions and challenge statements were organized to ensure a focused and structured analysis. I then applied the point evaluation tool, which is pluses, opportunities, issues, and new thinking, to assess themes and refine ideas, helping to break down complex issues and guide systematic decision-making towards an integrated solution. Overall, the application of the creative problem-solving tools to analyze the quantitative results allowed for a comprehensive and structured exploration of the data. By brainstorming data questions, reframing them as challenges, and using tools like the point evaluation, I was able to uncover deeper insights and identify actionable themes. This process not only highlights key areas of focus, but also provided a systematic approach to addressing complex issues, ensuring that the intervention program is grounded in evidence-based, innovative, and survivor-focused solutions. This foundation paves the way for meaningful discussions about the practical implementation of this proposed intervention. Based on the timeline for domestic violence survivors referenced in Chapter 2, particularly focused around the 12-plus month mark, when support services often face the greatest gap for survivors, this mixed methods approach presented 5 themes or staples for survivors to obtain long-term recovery. The essential components identified for the effective survivor-focused intervention program are: Number 1, economic empowerment and financial stability. This staple provides job training, educational programs, and financial literacy workshops to help survivors achieve long-term financial independence, enabling them to build stable careers and manage their finances effectively. The second staple is personal and professional development. The type of development that it would help a survivor the most is offering vocational training, higher education, and life skill programs such as time management and problem solving. This staple supports survivors' personal growth and equips them with skills for future success. The third staple is community engagement and peer support. By encouraging participation in community activities and support groups, this staple fosters confidence, connection, and mutual support among survivors, allowing them to share experiences and learn from one another. The fourth staple is sustainability and long-term planning. This staple focuses on helping survivors set long-term goals with regular check-ins to monitor progress, ensuring they have a clear roadmap for stability and ongoing support. The fifth and final staple is health and wellness. Providing access to mental health counseling and promoting self-care practices, this staple supports survivors' emotional and physical well-being, helping them maintain long-term recovery and a balanced life. These 5 components form the foundation of an effective intervention program to help survivors of domestic violence rebuild their lives and achieve long-term recovery and success. Using the staples and all quantitative and qualitative data gathered until this point, I theorized the development of an intervention that would meet all the staples as well as building on the original timeline to meet a survivor where they are needs-wise around the time they are becoming labeled no longer at risk by current service providers. The step-by-step process that was followed to theorize this theoretical intervention is the following. First, I analyzed the data. I began by carefully analyzing all the quantitative and qualitative data collected in the study. This allowed me to gain a deep understanding of survivors' needs in the present, as well as what they were going to need in the future to achieve long-term recovery without regression. Second, I brainstormed solutions. Next, I integrated the data to identify gaps and brainstorm potential interventions. This step was crucial in ensuring the program is relevant and impactful. Next, I identified the needs. Using both new insights and existing data, I identified the most critical needs for survivors to achieve long-term recovery. Looking back on the previously reviewed factors influencing a survivor's return to their abuser, the 12-month timeline, and the new staples to achieve long-term recovery, I looked at all of this information as a roadmap. And lastly, I developed the theoretical program. I designed a comprehensive intervention that encompasses all key areas, needs, and staples, ensuring a well-rounded, comprehensive, and holistic approach to survivor support. To ensure the intervention is tested effectively, I utilized the data represented in the top 5 aspects of the quantitative findings to select the most critical state for implementation first. New York was chosen based on the percentage of unmet needs versus the total people served, making them an ideal location to test and refine the program. To further break down the intervention program for you, this 9-month intervention program is designed for survivors of domestic violence who have been separated from their abuser for at least a year. The program aims to empower survivors by focusing on financial stability, personal growth, community engagement, and transition planning. It is structured into 3 phases, with each phase lasting 3 months for a total of 9 months from start to finish. This is a little less than the average academic certificate program. The first phase is called Foundations. In this phase, we focus on financial stability, career coaching, and financial management. Workshops that would be included in this phase are resume building, job search strategies, financial literacy, and personal development. The second phase is called Growth and Development. This builds on personal growth, wellness, and community involvement. Survivors learn stress management, volunteerism, leadership, self-advocacy, and how to utilize community resources. And because everyone needs to soar and thrive, the third phase is called Transition and Independence. This prepares survivors for independent living with transition planning, resilience building, continued community integration, and the creation of an alumni network for ongoing support. This structured program equips survivors with the skills and resources needed to rebuild their lives, achieve independence, and integrate into their communities, ultimately fostering a fulfilling, stable, long-term, successful future. The purpose of this study was to develop an innovative intervention to support the long-term recovery of domestic violence survivors. By analyzing trends and gaps in domestic violence services, this research explored how current provisions can be improved to promote post-traumatic growth. In this final section of my presentation, I will review the key findings, implications, limitations, and recommendations for future research. By integrating both quantitative trends and qualitative insights together, these findings provide a comprehensive understanding of the progress, challenges, and critical areas for improvement in domestic violence services. The most influential key findings can be broken down into the same process as the research design. First, looking at the quantitative findings, we observed significant progress in domestic violence services. Victim support increased from 62% in 2006 to 83% in 2023, reflecting improved service coverage or heightened demand. However, housing needs continue to remain unmet, and hotline calls have risen by 45%, highlighting growing awareness of domestic violence, but also signaling potential increasing incidents. Next, the qualitative findings revealed deeper insights into survivor challenges. Personal and professional development support coupled with financial instability are significant barriers to long-term recovery. Innovative approaches beyond traditional support systems are essential to address these gaps effectively. Finally, the integration of findings highlight the need for a holistic approach. While services are improved, persistent gaps in housing and financial aid hinder recovery. Comprehensive strategies that incorporate housing, financial support, and professional development are critical for fostering effective recovery of survivors. These findings underscore both progress and the need for continued efforts in addressing domestic violence. Ultimately, this study provides theoretical, practical, and methodological contributions, paving the way for comprehensive, evidence-based strategies in domestic violence intervention. On a theoretical scale, this study contributes to the theoretical understanding of domestic violence by highlighting the evolving nature of services shaped by societal awareness, economic conditions, and public health crises like the Great Recession and COVID-19. It emphasizes the interconnectedness of financial stability, mental health, and housing security in survivor recovery, advocating for a shift from crisis-focused intervention to holistic long-term support systems. Additionally, it introduces a framework integrating creative problem-solving tools to develop innovative survivor-focused solutions, offering a structured approach to addressing gaps in service provisions. On a practical scale, the practical implications of this study emphasize the need for an integrated approach to domestic violence services, addressing both immediate needs and long-term recovery. Practitioners are encouraged to use creative problem-solving techniques to develop flexible, innovative strategies tailored to survivors' diverse needs. Policymakers can advocate for sustained funding and comprehensive programs that go beyond crisis intervention, focusing on housing, financial stability, and systemic barriers in underserved areas. Holistic intervention strategies should incorporate financial literacy, career development, and mental health support to empower survivors, reducing re-victimization, and promote their long-term recovery. On a methodological level, the study's use of an explanatory sequential design offered valuable insights by combining quantitative data analysis with qualitative exploration. This approach effectively identified service provision gaps and provided a richer understanding of survivors' experiences. However, its reliance on historical data and sequential phases limit the scope of capturing emerging trends and broader qualitative exploration. Incorporating creative problem-solving tools into the qualitative phase enabled systemic innovation in addressing challenges faced by survivors. While this method proved effective, it required careful facilitation to maintain focus. Overall, the methodological implications highlight that integrating sequential design with creative problem-solving techniques is a robust framework for examining complex social issues like domestic violence and developing innovative evidence-based solutions. The quantitative phase of this study, which analyzed domestic violence census data, faced several limitations. Data quality was a key issue with inconsistencies in collection methods, reporting standards, and incomplete tracking of services across regions. Additionally, the lack of demographic variables such as socioeconomic status, age, race, or ethnicity restricted deeper analysis of factors influencing service provisions and unmet needs. The absence of details on specific barriers survivors faced further limited insights. Finally, the self-reported nature of the data introduced potential bias, as organizations' reporting may be influenced by funding requirements, capacity, or external pressures. The study highlights critical areas for improving domestic violence prevention, intervention, and support services. The key recommendations for practice include enhancing service integration, developing in holistic programs combining housing, financial, mental health, and legal support to ensure continuous care for survivors. Policy recommendations: to increase funding for emergency and transitional housing, and to advocate for academic empowerment through financial literacy, employment opportunities, and educational grants for survivors. The last recommendation for practice includes training and capacity building, to provide ongoing training in creative problem solving for service providers and to ensure cultural competency training to address the needs of diverse populations effectively. The key recommendations for future research include addressing gaps in literature, to conduct longitudinal studies to evaluate long-term survivor outcomes and to expand qualitative research to explore the lived experiences of marginalized survivors. Lastly, the need to explore new topics. This includes studying the impact of economic policies on domestic violence rates and piloting and evaluating innovative intervention models like community-based support or digital platforms. The key recommendations for methodological advancement include refining mixed methods, to better integrate quantitative and qualitative data and to expand the use of creative problem-solving tools in research phases. And lastly, adapting research designs, using adaptive designs responsive to social and economic changes and incorporating digital tools for richer real-time data collection. These recommendations aim to improve domestic violence services, foster innovation in research, and better support survivors through more effective and sustainable practices. This study examined domestic violence services from 2006 to 2023, revealing the need for comprehensive, innovative support system for survivors. By combining quantitative analysis with qualitative insights from creative problem-solving tools, it emphasized the importance of a holistic approach to recovery, addressing crisis intervention, housing, financial stability, and mental health. The research highlights the potential of creative methods to improve service provisions and policy development. Ultimately, the study offers new frameworks and methodologies to better meet survivors' evolving needs, providing a foundation for future research and practice to support long-term recovery. Thank you for your time, attention, and thoughtful engagement with my research as I've been working on it. I am deeply grateful to my committee, mentors, colleagues, friends, and family for their guidance and unwavering support throughout this journey. To all the survivors who inspire this work, your resilience fuels the hope for a better future. I welcome any questions, feedback, or insights at the upcoming scheduled final meeting for this dissertation defense presentation.